Every single morning, you wake up believing you're in control. You decide when to get out of bed. You choose what to eat, what to watch, what to think, and how to spend your day. But what if almost none of those decisions were actually yours? What if your life has been following the exact same invisible script for years? A script that was written long before you even realized it existed. Think about it. Have you ever promised yourself, tomorrow I'll wake up early. Tomorrow I'll finally start working out. Tomorrow I'll stop wasting time. Then tomorrow comes and somehow you do the exact same thing all over again. It's frustrating. You know what you should do. You genuinely want to change, but something always pulls you back. Almost like an invisible force is making the decisions for you. And here's the scary part. According to Neuroscience, nearly 95% of your daily actions happen automatically. Not because you're lazy, not because you lack motivation, but because your brain has been running the same program day after day, year after year. Which means the person you are today may simply be the result of that program, not your true potential. Now here's the good news. Every program can be rewritten, and some of the world's highest performers have already figured this out. Take David Goggins. Today, millions of people know him as one of the toughest men alive, a Navy SEAL, an ultra-marathon runner, a man who seems mentally unstoppable. But very few people remember who he used to be, before the discipline, before the fame, before the impossible achievements. David Goggins was living a completely different life. He was overweight, working a job he hated, constantly making excuses, watching his dreams disappear one day at a time, until one ordinary moment changed everything. It wasn't a motivational speech. It wasn't a lucky opportunity. It wasn't some secret shortcut. It was one decision, a decision to completely rewrite the way his mind worked. And once that happened, his entire life changed. So the real question isn't, can people change? History has already answered that. The real question is, why do so few people actually do it? That's exactly what we're about to uncover. Because once you understand how your mind really works, you'll realize you've been fighting the wrong battle this whole time.
Let's do a simple experiment. Don't answer out loud, just think about your day. You wake up. Before your feet even touch the floor, you reach for your phone. You check notifications, scroll through social media, maybe reply to a few messages. Then you get ready, eat breakfast, drive the same roads, see the same faces, do the same work, come home, watch YouTube, scroll through TikTok or Instagram. Tell yourself you'll sleep early tonight, but somehow it's midnight again. Then the next morning, everything repeats, again and again and again. At first, it feels like you're making choices, but look closer. Most of those actions happen without thinking. They're automatic, like pressing play on a movie you've already watched 100 times. And that's exactly how the human brain is designed. It loves routines. It loves habits, because habits save energy. The less your brain has to think, the more energy it can save. That's why driving to work eventually feels effortless, why tying your shoes doesn't require concentration, and why brushing your teeth happens almost without thinking. Habits aren't bad. In fact, they're one of the brain's greatest inventions. The problem begins when the habits controlling your life are the ones quietly holding you back.
Imagine buying the most powerful computer ever built, the fastest processor, unlimited storage, the best graphics, but someone installs the wrong software. No matter how expensive that computer is, it'll still perform poorly, not because the hardware is broken, but because the program is. Your brain works the same way. Every experience you've ever had, every compliment, every insult, every success, every failure, every opinion you accepted has been quietly writing code into your mind. Over time, that code becomes your identity. You stop saying, "I failed," and start saying, "I'm a failure." You stop saying, "I made a mistake," and start believing, "I'm just not good enough." Without realizing it,
Those thoughts become instructions, and your subconscious mind follows them perfectly. Because your brain doesn't judge whether a belief is true or false. It only asks one question: have I heard this enough times to believe it? And once the answer is yes, that belief becomes your reality.
Here's where most people get it wrong. They believe success is all about motivation. They wait for the perfect Monday, the perfect morning, the perfect mood. But motivation is unreliable. Some days you wake up feeling unstoppable. Other days, you don't even want to get out of bed. If motivation were enough, everyone who bought a gym membership in January would still be working out in December. But they're not, because motivation doesn't create lasting change. Programming does. Scientists estimate that thousands of thoughts pass through your mind every single day. The surprising part? Most of them aren't new. They're the exact same thoughts you had yesterday, and the day before that, and the week before that. Imagine watching the same movie every day for 10 years. Eventually, you'd know every scene by heart. Your brain works the same way. The more often you think something, the stronger that mental pathway becomes. Eventually, your brain stops questioning it. It simply accepts it as reality. That's why someone who constantly thinks, "I'm not good enough," will begin noticing only the moments that prove they're not good enough. Someone who believes, "People always disappoint me," will remember every betrayal, while ignoring the people who stayed loyal. Your brain is constantly filtering reality, not to show you what's true, but to confirm what you already believe. And that's exactly why changing your life feels so difficult. You're trying to create a new future with an old program.
Years before millions of people knew his name, David Goggins was living a life he could barely recognize. He weighed nearly 300 pounds. He worked long hours doing a job that left him exhausted. Every night, he would go home, watch television, eat unhealthy food, and promise himself, tomorrow will be different. But tomorrow never changed. Not because he didn't want a better life, because his habits always won. Then, one evening, everything changed. While flipping through television channels, he watched a documentary about the United States Navy SEALs. These were ordinary men doing extraordinary things, pushing themselves beyond limits most people thought were impossible. Something about that documentary hit him hard. For the first time, he stopped blaming his circumstances. He stopped blaming other people. He stopped making excuses. Instead, he asked himself one simple question: if they can become that person, why can't I? That question haunted him. He walked into the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and barely recognized the man staring back. He wasn't looking at his weight. He was looking at years of broken promises, years of excuses, years of choosing comfort over growth. Later, Goggins would describe this as one of the most painful moments of his life, because for the first time, he saw himself exactly as he was. Not the person he pretended to be, not the person he wished he was. The truth. And the truth hurt. But sometimes, pain is exactly what wakes us up.
That night, David made a decision not to lose weight, not to become famous, not to become a Navy SEAL. Those goals came later. His first decision was much simpler. He decided, "I'm done lying to myself." It sounds small, but that sentence changed everything. Because the biggest prison isn't made of steel, it's made of stories. Stories like, "I'll start next week," "I'm too old," "I'm too young," "I'm not talented enough," "People like me don't succeed." The more you repeat those stories, the more real they become. Eventually, they stop feeling like opinions, they become facts. And once something feels like a fact, your brain builds your life around it. David understood something most people never do. If you want a different life, you first need a different identity. Because every action you take comes from the person you believe you are. Someone who believes "I'm healthy" naturally makes healthier choices. Someone who believes "I'm disciplined" finds it easier to stay consistent. Someone who believes "I'm always unlucky" will find proof of bad luck everywhere they look. Your identity is the blueprint. Your habits are simply the construction. Change the blueprint, and the building changes too.
Now here's the biggest mistake people make.
They try to change their habits without changing their identity. They say, I'll force myself to wake up early. I'll force myself to eat healthy. I'll force myself to stop procrastinating. Maybe it works for a day, maybe even a week, but eventually they fall right back into old patterns. Why? Because willpower is like a battery. The more you use it, the weaker it becomes. Your subconscious doesn't get tired. It runs 24 hours a day, quietly, automatically, without asking for permission. That's why this isn't a battle between discipline and laziness. It's a battle between your conscious goals and the invisible program that's been running your life for years. The good news? Programs can be rewritten, and that's exactly where your transformation begins. Imagine planting the same seed in two different places. The first seed is planted in rich, healthy soil. It gets sunlight, fresh water, room to grow. The second seed is dropped onto dry concrete. No water, no sunlight, no chance. Now ask yourself, was the second seed weaker? No, it simply grew in the wrong environment. The same thing happens to people. Most of us spend years trying to change ourselves while staying in the exact same environment that created our bad habits in the first place. We wake up to the same routine, scroll through the same social media feeds, listen to the same negative voices, surround ourselves with the same people, and somehow we expect a completely different life. It doesn't work that way, because your environment is constantly teaching your brain what is normal. And once something feels normal, your subconscious fights to keep it that way. Think back to when you were a child. Nobody handed you a manual explaining how to speak. Nobody sat you down and taught you every word. You simply listened. Day after day, year after year. Eventually, you started speaking exactly like the people around you. Without realizing it, you copied their accent, their words, their habits, even the way they reacted to problems. That's how powerful your environment is. Now, imagine growing up hearing things like, money doesn't grow on trees. People like us never become successful. Dreams don't pay the bills. Play it safe. Don't take risks. At first, they're just words. But after hearing them hundreds of times, your brain stops treating them like opinions. It accepts them as facts. And once a belief becomes part of your identity, it starts making decisions for you. Not because it's true, but because it's familiar.
Here's something fascinating. Your brain isn't designed to make you successful. It's designed to keep you safe. And to your brain, safe doesn't mean better. Safe means familiar. Even if your current habits are making you unhappy, your brain would rather stay with what's familiar than risk something unknown. That's why people stay in jobs they hate, relationships that drain them, routines that make them miserable. Not because they enjoy them, but because they're predictable. Your subconscious whispers, "At least we know what to expect." The unknown feels dangerous, even when it's exactly where your future is waiting.
Have you ever decided to start eating healthy, only to crave junk food a few days later? Or promised yourself you'd stop scrolling on your phone, but somehow ended up opening the same apps without even thinking? That's not a lack of discipline. That's your subconscious trying to pull you back to what's familiar. It hates sudden change, because change requires energy. It requires uncertainty, and your brain tries to avoid both. That's why the first few days of building a new habit always feel the hardest. You're not just changing your behavior, you're challenging years of programming. Take a look at the 5 people you spend the most time with. Not because they're bad people, but because human beings naturally adapt to the people around them. If everyone around you complains, complaining starts to feel normal. If everyone wastes hours scrolling online, you'll probably do the same. If nobody around you dreams bigger, eventually, neither will you. Success isn't contagious, but neither is failure. Habits spread. Mindsets spread. Standards spread. Whether you realize it or not, the people closest to you are constantly shaping the person you're becoming. That's why high performers are extremely protective of their environment. They don't just manage their time, they manage what enters their mind. The books they read, the podcasts they listen to,
the conversations they have, the content they consume, because they know every piece of information is writing new code into their brain.
So, where do you begin? Not by trying to become a completely different person overnight. You begin by changing what your brain sees every day. Replace 1 hour of mindless scrolling with 1 hour of learning. Replace negative conversations with inspiring ones. Spend more time around people who challenge you to grow. Read books that expand your thinking. Listen to voices that push you forward instead of pulling you back. Little by little, your subconscious begins collecting new evidence, new beliefs, new possibilities, and something incredible starts to happen. The life that once felt impossible begins to feel normal, because the greatest transformation doesn't happen when you force yourself to change. It happens when your environment quietly teaches your brain that change is simply who you are. Even after changing your environment, most people still fail. Why? Because there's one voice they can't escape, the voice inside their own head. It's the same voice that says, "You're not ready. You'll probably fail. You've tried this before. Who do you think you are?" That voice has stopped more dreams than failure ever could. And learning how to silence it might be the most important skill you'll ever develop. There's someone who talks to you every single day. Someone who knows every fear you've ever had, every mistake you've ever made, every insecurity you've tried to hide. And the strange part is, that person is you. From the moment you wake up until the moment you fall asleep, your mind never stops talking. Most people don't even notice it anymore because it's become background noise. But here's the truth. The words you repeat to yourself eventually become the person you believe you are. Think about it. If you hear something once, you'll probably forget it. Hear it 10 times and you'll remember it. Hear it 1,000 times and you'll start believing it. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a fact and a story you've repeated for years. If every day you tell yourself, "I'm not smart enough," "I'm always unlucky," "I never finish what I start," your subconscious records those words like commands. And once a command is repeated enough, it becomes your reality. Not because it's true, but because your brain has accepted it as truth. Imagine introducing yourself to a stranger. You don't say, "Sometimes I procrastinate." You say, "I'm a procrastinator." You don't say, "I failed at this project." You say, "I'm a failure." Do you see the difference? The first describes an action. The second creates an identity. And identities are incredibly powerful because people naturally behave in ways that match who they believe they are. If someone believes, "I'm an athlete," they'll naturally choose healthier food. They'll exercise even when they don't feel like it. Not because they're forcing themselves, but because that's simply who they are. Now, imagine someone who believes, "I'm lazy." Even when they try to change, their subconscious keeps pulling them back because every new habit feels like it's attacking their identity. That's why changing behavior isn't enough. You have to change the story you're telling yourself. Close your eyes for a second. What's one negative sentence you've been repeating for years? Maybe it's, "I'm terrible with money. I'm awkward around people. I'm just not confident. I'll never be successful. I'm too old to start over." Or maybe, "It's too late for me." Now ask yourself something. Who told you that? Was it a teacher? A parent? A friend? A failure from years ago? Or did you simply repeat it so many times that it started feeling true? Most of our limiting beliefs aren't facts. They're old opinions that we've mistaken for reality. Think about some of the greatest performers in history. Before Arnold Schwarzenegger became a 7-time Mr. Olympia, people laughed at his dream. They told him his accent would never allow him to become a Hollywood star. They said his goals were impossible, but Arnold kept seeing something different. Long before the trophies, long before the movies, he already saw himself as a champion. He once explained that every time he trained, he pictured the body he wanted. He imagined standing on stage holding the trophy. To everyone else, it looked like imagination. To his brain, it became preparation. Every workout reinforced the identity he had already created in his mind. Because your brain moves toward the picture you give it. If all you picture is failure, you'll prepare for failure. If all you picture is success, you'll begin preparing for success.
2021. Every night before you fall asleep, your mind is incredibly receptive. Instead of ending your day with endless scrolling, spend 5 minutes imagining the person you're becoming. See yourself waking up early, working with focus, finishing difficult tasks, staying disciplined, feeling healthy, feeling confident. Don't just watch the movie, step inside it, feel it, hear it, experience it. The more detailed your vision becomes, the easier it is for your subconscious to accept it. Because your subconscious doesn't respond to wishes, it responds to repetition. Here's where most people get stuck. They dream, they visualize, they make vision boards, they repeat affirmations. Then they wonder why nothing changes. Because imagination without action is entertainment. Real transformation happens when your actions begin matching your new identity. Every small decision becomes another vote for the person you're becoming. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. Because there's one final piece of the puzzle, the habit that separates people who stay motivated for a week from the people who completely transform their lives.
This might sound unbelievable, but your brain responds to vivid imagination in powerful ways. When you mentally rehearse an experience, many of the same neural pathways activate as if you're actually doing it. That's why professional athletes don't just train their bodies, they train their minds. Before a championship game, many close their eyes. They imagine making the perfect pass, landing the perfect shot, crossing the finish line. By the time the real moment arrives, their brain has already experienced it hundreds of times. Confidence isn't something they magically discover, it's something they've rehearsed. Now, imagine applying that to your own life. Before a job interview, picture yourself speaking with confidence. Before giving a presentation, imagine yourself staying calm. Before starting a business, picture yourself solving problems instead of fearing them. Your brain begins treating those situations as familiar instead of dangerous. And familiar things don't create fear.
Here's the truth. Reading books won't change your life. Watching motivational videos won't change your life. Even understanding everything you've heard today won't change your life. Because knowledge has never been the problem. Action is. Every year, millions of people promise themselves they'll become healthier, more productive, more successful. But only a small percentage actually follow through. Why? Because they wait until they feel ready. The problem is, you'll almost never feel ready. If you wait for motivation, you'll spend your entire life waiting. The people who succeed aren't always more talented. They aren't always smarter. They simply learned something most people never do. Action comes first. Motivation comes later. Imagine your identity as a bank account. Every decision you make is either a deposit or a withdrawal. Wake up when your alarm rings? Deposit. Hit the snooze button? Withdraw. Read 10 pages of a book? Deposit. Scroll social media for an hour? Withdraw. Choose healthy food? Deposit. Make another excuse? Withdraw. One decision won't change your life, just like one workout won't make you fit, and one unhealthy meal won't make you unhealthy. But thousands of tiny decisions repeated every single day create the person you'll become. Success isn't built in one giant moment. It's built in thousands of invisible ones.
Years before millions of people knew his name, David Goggins was living a life he could barely recognize. He weighed nearly 300 pounds. He worked long hours doing a job that left him exhausted. Every night, he would go home, watch television, eat unhealthy food, and promise himself, tomorrow will be different. But tomorrow never changed. Not because he didn't want a better life, because his habits always won. Then, one evening, everything changed. While flipping through television channels, he watched a documentary about the United States Navy SEALs. These were ordinary men doing extraordinary things, pushing themselves beyond limits most people thought were impossible. Something about that documentary hit him hard. For the first time, he stopped blaming his circumstances. He stopped blaming other people. He stopped making excuses. Instead, he asked himself one simple question: if they can become that person, why can't I? That question haunted him. He walked into the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and barely recognized the man staring back. He wasn't looking at his weight. He was looking at years of broken promises, years of excuses, years of choosing comfort over growth. Later, Goggins would describe this as one of the most painful moments of his life, because for the first time, he saw himself exactly as he was. Not the person he pretended to be, not the person he wished he was. The truth. And the truth hurt. But sometimes, pain is exactly what wakes us up.
So let me ask you one final question. 1 year from today, where will you be? Not where you hope to be, not where you wish to be. Where will your daily habits actually take you? Because your future isn't created by your biggest dreams. It's created by your daily routine. The person you'll become next year is being built by the choices you make today. Every excuse, every action, every distraction, every moment of discipline, they're all writing your future right now. After this video ends, nothing around you will look different. Your room will be the same. Your phone will still be there. Your problems won't magically disappear. But something inside you can change. You'll have two choices. You can close this video, go back to your normal routine, and let your old programming take control again. Or you can decide that today becomes the day everything changes. Not because you're suddenly motivated, not because life became easier, but because you finally understood one simple truth. The life you've been waiting for will only begin when you become the person capable of creating it. No one else can do that for you. Not your family, not your friends, not a motivational speaker, not this video. Only you.
Now here's the biggest mistake people make. They try to change their habits without changing their identity. They say, I'll force myself to wake up early. I'll force myself to eat healthy. I'll force myself to stop procrastinating. Maybe it works for a day, maybe even a week, but eventually they fall right back into old patterns. Why? Because willpower is like a battery. The more you use it, the weaker it becomes. Your subconscious doesn't get tired. It runs 24 hours a day, quietly, automatically, without asking for permission. That's why this isn't a battle between discipline and laziness. It's a battle between your conscious goals and the invisible program that's been running your life for years. The good news? Programs can be rewritten, and that's exactly where your transformation begins.